Hello, Trail Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. We have an amazing guest today. I can't wait for you to dive in and listen to Liz. This is exactly what the Learn True Health podcast is about. It's about showing you that there's this quantum level healing that's available to you. And I know this for some people that sounds corny, that sounds too good to be true, that sounds far fetched or just exaggerated. There's so much proof, there's so much evidence to support the idea that we can radically change our health. That even though against what all the people in lab coats have said to you in the past, that you can shift your life in a way that allows you to have true health, no matter what your diagnosis is. And Liz works with people who even have end of life beyond stage 4 cancer, and they go into radical remission. They go into spontaneous healings, or they go into such a beautiful remission over several months where now it's been 10, 20 years and they're still cancer free or they're still disease free. Not just cancer, but people take cancer pretty seriously. It's one of those diseases where people are willing to fly to Mexico and go around the world to find what's going to help their body heal itself. And so when we look at a major diagnosis, usually we're given a death sentence by a medical professional, or we're told, you might have 5 years, or, if you do all the cut, burn, and poison stuff, you may live for 5 years. And it's so morbid. It's such a bleak outlook. And then we have what Liz talks about today, this entire other spectrum where people are plugging themselves into information that supports their body's ability to heal themselves emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, and take their body to the next level. No matter what you've been told, take it to the next level. That's what today's episode's about. I am so excited for you to dive into this because it does take a mental shift. There is a belief system change, at least taking on the hope, expanding your awareness to what's possible. That is the first step. Before we dive into today's episode, there's two resources and a story I wanted to share with you. I meant to share it during the interview and it came up in my mind. The conversation kept going. And then afterwards I was like, oh shoot, I meant to bring up this one story. It's so cool. When we moved almost 2 years ago, but like 18 months ago, we moved to a new area, 45 minutes away from where we had been living for 7 years. And a friend of mine recommended a church that I join. It's a beautiful church that believes in the body's ability to heal itself, that believes that God, the divine intervention, spontaneous healings, miracles, this whole body, this whole church believes in miracles. And it's so cool because there's hundreds of people that come to this church and they lay on hands and they pray. And I'm very new to this because I was raised Anglican, which for those not in the UK or Canada don't know much what Anglican is. I was raised Protestant, so it's sort of like Catholic light. And I didn't have a lot of experience with the other denominations, other types of Christian outlook. So I joined this church and I see people jumping up and down and, dancing in the aisles. And I thought, well, the energy here is amazing. It was definitely not what I was used to. I was used to like incense and in nomine Padre et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, a very different kind of church environment. But I went with it because I was like, man, people are just on fire. They're so in love. There's something there. And I remember, actually my first experience there, I went alone and I felt my daughter in my arms. I felt this pressure on right where I'd held her, because I held her for hours before the coroner took her away, and right on my left shoulder I could feel her. And when I was in church, all of a sudden I felt her. I felt the pressure, like the baby was in my arms. I went through so much emotional healing that first month. The first, 4 times I went to that church, each time, especially during worship where we're singing, it was just waves and waves of grief being released. And I brought it. I guess I just brought it all. I brought everything that I was holding on to, and it was so beautiful. During that time, the early, like 18 months ago, the early part of me, like just plugging into this church community, there was a woman who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I've lost a best friend to breast cancer. I know so many people who've lost someone to breast cancer. It's a pretty big deal. I know breast cancer survivors too. I've had friends with them also. So it's not like it's not it's not a death sentence. It doesn't have to be a death sentence, but it is scary. And she had a tumor, and everyone prayed for her, and she prayed, and she received a very clear. She said it was the voice from God, and He said to her, "I am burning this away out of you with fire. It is gone. I burned it away with fire." And she wasn't quite sure what that meant. And at the time, I wasn't confident that I ever heard God's voice like audibly. But I so wanted to have that same experience, because some people have these phenomenal spiritual experiences, these metaphysical experiences that are so beautiful and brilliant, and then there's other people who don't, and it's like, well, why do some do and why do some don't? And I think we have to take the first step and say, I want this, I want to plug into this, I want to experience this. And she threw herself in, and she goes, I have faith, God, that you'll heal me, that this is what you have for me. So she goes to the doctor, and they want to do another scan. They're getting ready to cut her breast off or do radiation, all the stuff they're ready to do. And she goes, I don't need any of that. God told me that the tumor's gone, that He burned it away. And they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, right, get in the MRI. Like, just, okay, sure, get it in. Like, let's just do the scan anyway. She's like, fine, well, I don't need to prove it to myself, because I believe God did it because He said so. But I'll humor you to show you that God's work. And she got into the machine, and they scanned her breast, and they just had a scan. They know, like, they're going to compare 1 month to the next month kind of thing. Or it was a recent scan that they had, and now they're checking it again, because they need to do, in order to do surgery, they need more of an exact, like, okay, how much has it grown? Like, where are we going to cut? And they said, this is so wild. It's gone. The only thing left on the scan is something that just looks like smoke. It just looks like there's smoke there on the image. That's all that's left. There's no tumor. There's no defined lines. It just looks like smoke. And she goes, I told you, God burned it away. Now, that was so powerful, and it hit me. And I know there's people out there that don't believe in God, and I'm not here to make anyone upset, or, I want to give you all the information and hopefully allow to expand your awareness to what's possible. Right. And if a woman goes in and okay, let's play the devil's advocate, because I am such a doubting Thomas, right? Let's play the devil's advocate, right? And I believe God. I believe that there is a God. That's my own personal belief system. I believe that there's a divine creator, and there's people who don't. So if you're someone who doesn't, and that's you, and I honor, love, and respect everyone listening. What I want for you is, I want true health. I want you to feel love. I want you to feel purpose. I want you to feel that, you get to have true health. No matter where you come from politically, what country you come from, what belief system you have, whether you have religion or not, you and I are connected. We're both humans. We both breathe the same air. We both, if we're cut, we bleed. If you hurt us, we'll cry, right? You and I are connected, and I love you, and I want greatness for you. I want you to have your goals, and I want you to have your health. So regardless of whether you believe in God or not, okay, let's play the devil's advocate. Let's say that there's no God, right? And now, again, not my belief system, maybe it's yours, but let's just say there's not. Does that really matter? In the grand scheme of things, whether there is or isn't, she's healed. Now, is it all in her mind that she heard a voice that said her tumor's gone and now it's gone? Like, does that matter? So for me, it's like some people say, well, ginger, ginger's super healthy for you, or turmeric's super healthy for you. And some people have these amazing miraculous healings when they take ginger and turmeric and some herbs. And then other people go, well, we have to have studies and we have to have science. I'm like, that I don't care whether it was a placebo or not. For that individual, they get to go home to their family. They get to hug their kids. They get to be with their spouse. Like, they have a new lease on life. And so, their belief system shifted to a point where whatever they were doing, whether it was divine intervention in God, whether it was a placebo effect, it was some kind of miraculous, like a mind over matter experience, whether it was the herbs they were taking, whether all of the above, the fact that she no longer has cancer, that's For me, that is the end result. I want everyone to have true health. Now, at the end of the day, we know that people who have a connection to source, connection to their creator, that they are generally more fulfilled and happier in life. And so, you don't have to get involved in religion, but we do talk at some point in this interview, we do touch on this subject. So I just want to preface it with, I want for you to feel purpose in life and to feel fulfilled and to feel deeply, deeply loved and valued. And some people get that from their connection to God. And some people get that from their connection to nature, their connection to family. Those things are things you can't buy, but you can cultivate and you can grow. So we talk about a bit about that. We talk about a lot of really cool things, 10 steps to radical remission and spontaneous healings. We're going to dive in. Beautiful episode. Before we jump in, just one more thing. I wanted to let you know about 2 episodes that I mentioned in today's podcast. So I want you guys to go back because I didn't mention the numbers during this interview. Episode 496 is the phototherapy episode. Check that out. As part of it, we discuss something that increases glutathione by 300% in the first 24 hours. And it's the equivalent of like a coffee a day kind of thing, the cost of a coffee a day. Whereas it's actually the cheapest way to increase glutathione in the body. It's cheaper and more effective than any other modality. And so that's something I feel that everyone should know about, but especially those who want radical remission. There's also a way to stimulate your body's own production of stem cells at any age, and increasing several peptides that have anti-cancer properties. It's really phenomenal. I have over 100 clients using this technology now, and we're seeing outstanding results. So definitely check out episode 496, and I'd love to chat with you. If you want to chat with me, we can have a free phone call. I'd love to help you. I'm a health coach. I've been doing this for 12 years now, and I am deeply passionate about helping you overcome your health issues. You can go to learntruehealth.com and in the menu, click on Work with Ashley James. Scroll down to the first appointment. That's the free consultation. I'd love to chat with you. You can hire me as your health coach. You don't have to. That's an option for you. You can just chat with me for free. I'm going to email you some resources and help set you on your path to health, so help answer some questions for you. And you can choose to hire me or not. I'm just here to help you. The last thing is episode 106. This is a few years ago episode, going all the way back to episode 106 with Joshua Rosenthal. He's the founder of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is IIN, and they do the world's biggest and longest and most popular and most thorough online health coach training program. They have a 6-month program. They have a 12-month program. Deepak Chopra has now become a part of it. He's now a business owner with Joshua Rosenthal, and that together they've even revamped the health coach training program since I took it, and they've added a lot more. It's a wonderfully transformative year. If you do it, the year it takes about 20 to 30 minutes a day. You can do it while you're driving. You don't have to sit down at a desk. So it's designed for very busy people. But if you want to get it done sooner, you can do their year-long program, which is about an hour a day. And I would love for you to check out the free course, they give you a sample course. Go to learntruehealth.com/coach. That's learntruehealth.com/coach. So if you have any interest at all in health coach training programs or just want to look into it, see about it, check it out. I negotiated years ago, back when I interviewed Joshua Rosenthal, I got them to agree to give a really big discount to my listeners, and they honor that. So when you give them a call to sign up, make sure you mention Ashley James and the Learn True Health podcast, because I get a great discount for you guys. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you so much for sharing this episode and all of my episodes with those you care about, especially this episode with your friends and family who are concerned about overcoming major illnesses and getting their health to the next level. Enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 509. I am so excited for today's guest. We have on the show Liz Curran from radicalremission.com. I can't wait to dive in. This is such a juicy subject. I pretty much feel like all my listeners want radical remission. So before we even just dive in, Liz, can you give us that definition of what radical remission is?
I absolutely can. So, a radical remission is there are three points. The first one is someone that heals without conventional treatment. The second one is someone who first tries conventional treatment, which does not lead to a remission. So they try an alternative treatment, which does lead to a remission. And then the third one is that someone that uses a combination of conventional and alternative treatments at the same time in order to outlive a dire prognosis that is less than 25% 5-year survival rate.
So for radicalremission.com, is that talking specifically about like cancer and other major diseases, or are we also covering like remission from alcohol, from addiction, or remission from, emotional trauma? Does it cover all of health, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, or are we just talking about disease, physical disease?
Absolutely, we believe that these concepts, these 10 healing factors that we'll share, are for everyone. They really are they encompass the mind, body, and spirit. So anyone that is looking to heal from situations where they're kind of in a dire diagnosis of sorts, or even people who, the research for radical remission, and that kind of is the foundation for the Radical Remission Project, was done on cancer patients. So a lot of times people will think radical remission is applicable only to that. We have another book that came out in 2020 called Radical Hope that kind of opens up these healing factors to people who have kind of life-altering diagnoses. And as we'll share in my personal story, my sister passed away from very aggressive cancer. And because of her situation, I practice these from a preventative place. So I'm what you call a previvor.
Oh my goodness. I feel like you're talking to, I think everyone's ears are perked up. I feel like you're talking to everyone, absolutely everyone either has something they want to overcome, that maybe a doctor has said, well, this is, you're just going to have this for the rest of your life, or you just have this because it's genetic, or because your mom had it, or because your color of your skin, or whatever. Like we're told so many lies by the medical establishment. And I feel that individual doctors have like their heart's in the right place, but their training has brainwashed them to tell us that we can't heal ourselves and that we're stuck with a problem that needs a drug. I believe that drugs have their place, but I think 90% of the time we're misusing them, when we need to look at the body as a whole, our life as a whole, and that we can heal. And I love the more that we listen to radical remission stories, the more it builds our hope, and we realize that yes, my body can heal itself, and we begins to build that hope and that vision in our mind. And we see time and time again in studies that placebo effect, and I'm not saying that natural medicine is a fake thing, right? But I'm saying that your belief system, how many books have been written on the belief system overcoming medical things and having wonderful remissions. So of course there's that mind body connection. Of course we can build that hope inside us, build that vision, and that we can seek out natural remedies to support our body's ability to heal ourselves. And so I think you've just talked to all the listeners, because either they want to overcome something, or they have a dear loved one in their life that can overcome something. Type 2 diabetes is 100% recoverable easily. I help people all the time recover from type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes can be helped so much that they can become so healthy and live such a long healthy life that it's not about not having type 1, it's about how good can we get our health, and they're told they can't, but there's so much out there in the holistic space that lets them build their health. So I'm just thinking about all the different diagnoses that if we listen to the medical establishment, we're told we just can't heal. And that's not the case. Time and time again, it's not the case. We can heal ourselves. So, Liz, I'm so excited for what you're doing. I'm so excited for your podcast that's going to be launched soon
Yeah.
in the fall time.
Yeah.
Hearing the radical remission stories, that just, man, I have a feeling I'm going to listen to that show and just cry every episode.
Well, one of the original missions of Radical Remission, when it was, the information was first being brought out, was to make sure that we could share as many healing stories as possible for people who've overcome the odds of their diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So really making sure that people know that whether you're using treatment or you're not using treatment specifically around cancer, but in general, knowing that, again, the body has the ability to heal, and having these, as I'll share, these 10 healing factors from this research really gives people the tools that they need so that they can begin to kind of take the reins and find their way to their own way to healing, with or without the aid of their practitioners, depending on who they feel is gonna kind of have a seat at the table.
Love it. Liz, we're definitely want to jump into those 10 steps. We definitely want to leave the listener with some meat, right? Some tangible, some stuff that can start to shift their life and their hope and their health today. Before we do that, I want to jump into your story, though, because I'm really curious how you came about finding radical remission. And I hear you have your own radical remission story.
Well, I guess it all started back in 2014. My sister was diagnosed with a very rare, very aggressive breast cancer, and went through the typical, conventional path of chemo, mastectomy, radiation. And on the last day of her 30 days of radiation, she had back pain. So they gave her a scan and they found the cancer was throughout her whole body. Oh. So that was the last thing we expected and the last thing we wanted. So that was a really hard time. And during her treatment, I really went deep into kind of like, some people go into addiction of sorts. I went into addiction to health. I went into diet change and learning about meditation and stress reduction and anxiety reduction, and just for my own personal sanity. And after she passed, almost not quite even a year after she was diagnosed, I had all this information and these tools that really helped me get through, obviously the most difficult point in my life at that point. And it was really powerful for me to be able to kind of go into health coaching and begin to share the different things that I had learned. And at that same time, a couple of years after my sister passed away, a neighbor of mine was diagnosed with basically an untreatable cancer. And she was 35 and she had a 4 and 5-year-old, and they were basically, I told her that chemo would buy her time, but it wouldn't be a high quality of life and it would not be curative. So as she said, she always kind of believed that she's extremely religious, very, very powerful Christian. So she followed her belief system, and it led her to, with nothing else to lose, she ended up going to Mexico to be treated for her cancer, and was at an integrative approach, a healing center with an integrative approach in Mexico. And within 3 months of her trip to Mexico, her tumors had reduced 50%. And by 6 months from her first visit, it didn't even show up on a scan. There was nothing to be shown. So that was a huge wake up call. She was shocked. We were shocked. We were thrilled. And as we, unfortunately, during that process, we realized how very expensive getting that treatment was, and
Yep.
how that was kind of unfair. And we didn't believe that people should have to, lose everything just to be able to live based on a diagnosis. So a group of our neighbors and friends created a nonprofit at the time to help fundraise for people who were seeking treatment for cancer that was not covered by health insurance.
Love
So
it.
that's actually the very long version of how I found Radical Remission,
Oh my
because it was
gosh.
through that work in the nonprofit that I was introduced to my dear friend of mine now, John, who was a Radical Remission survivor at that time. And so he introduced me to the book and to the Radical Remission Project, and told me that there was a training. And I, as a health coach, I was a practicing health coach at the time, but had not been working in the cancer realm, found that those 10 healing factors were the roadmap that people needed, regardless of cancer, but just for any old health coach to use.
Mm-hmm.
So these great tools to guide people to kind of a full body healing, like you said, that mind, body, and spirit approach.
Mm. What's the name of the nonprofit?
Well, it just retired this year, but it was called Heal Thy Life. And it's spelled healthy life with a little spin on a capital T and healthy. So we always loved that. Heal Thy Life kind of embodied our friend Sharon on her journey. That was just an incredible inspiration to everyone that knew her in our area. Just kind of a local celebrity for choosing that path to healing and finding so much success in it. So it was very pivotal for me in my approach to healing and approach to life, really. And so once I knew of that, it kind of became a lit a fire in me that I never wanted anyone to go through what my sister had gone through without having all of the information, because
Mm-hmm.
had she had the information, she may have had more time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I lost my mom to cancer, and I lost one of my best friends. And she started out the natural way.
Mm-hmm.
And then she stopped the growth of the tumors, but the tumor remained. Actually, it was just one tumor at the time. It just sat there, but it stopped. It was very aggressive, but she was able to get it to stop growing.
Amazing.
And then she ran out of money, and she had fundraised, $50,000. She'd been to Mexico, just everything. And
Mm-hmm.
she had lost a bunch of weight in a good way, because she was like juicing and eating super clean, and she was doing everything right. But she ran out of funds. She couldn't buy any more of the supplements or the juice or anything. And then she talked to a naturopath. He's like, well, we need a killing agent. So, if you don't have the money for it, go for very light levels of chemotherapy, which was metronomic chemotherapy, where they
Mm.
do small amounts each week instead of these giant boluses.
Yeah.
And very quickly, because she coupled that with still juicing, still fasting, the intermittent fasting, all this, and it went 100% away. It was gone. But then and this is where she, like, I wished and I begged her, just stop, reevaluate, build your health back. Just, it's gone. It's not on any scans. Just please,
Yeah.
please, please, like, trust the process. Like, your body has overcome it. Trust the process. And the chemo dealer, the doctor said to her, now you have to go for radiation, because if you don't, it's going to come back and you're going to be wiped out. Well, that's where everything went downhill. I
Mhm.
once heard one of my mentors said that one of his clients said, this client said, never get radiation. There's a hole in my body that will not close,
Hmm.
and will not heal because of it. Now, I'm not saying, that you can't just say blanket statement about everything, but we I have not personally met someone where they had a positive, like, oh yeah, radiation totally helped, I feel amazing, and my health is 100%, 5 years later. She ended up having, within the first treatment, it caused radiation scars on her lungs, and then
Mm.
everything went downhill from there, and she died a few months later. And the day
Wow.
she was in the hospital in a coma, the same oncologist called and said, when are you coming in for your next round of chemo? Like, come on, we got to get you back in. We got to get you back in. And I'm like, 2 minutes later, she died. Like, that was just, we were like, we called, called them the whole time saying like, hey, she's in the hospital. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. But,
Yeah.
and, and it was so painful because if we had just had more money, and that should not be a choice. That should
Right.
not be the reason why someone suffers and dies and leaves their 7-year-old son alone.
Right.
And that's just, and she cried and cried because she lost her dad when she was really young, and she just didn't want to leave her son with the same. She loved him so much. So this the fact that we're given a wellness model that is like, if you're not a millionaire, go suck an egg. Like it's so that's why I was really touched by your the charity that you guys built, and I'm so grateful for crowdfunding because we can get together and help each other, but there needs to be a better way, and I hope that what you're doing can inspire people, can inspire listeners, that we can together we can figure out a way to help each other. And I just hope that the podcast that you do reaches the right person, that starts a movement that makes it more affordable for all. I hate the word alternative care because it's like, well, this care is better, but we're going to call it alternative. Like,
Right.
it's secondary.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Well, Liz, so
Yes.
since meeting John and being introduced to radical remission and beginning to work with these 10 steps with your clients, what kind of changes did you see in your own personal health?
Well, I say that these factors brought me out of my grief. That's really how I feel like they helped me with my mental and, spiritual self at that really difficult time. And what happens a lot of times when people don't know of the healing factors, but find kind of their own version of healing, which I expect that you'll see the same when you see them or hear them. That people see that they've been doing these steps just intuitively. And that's exactly what happened for me. If you'd like, I can share a couple of the healing factors if you'd like for me to, as I
Is this
share my
part
story.
of the 10 steps?
Yes.
Okay, well, okay, fine. Let's just jump in right now. Let's jump in. Let's jump
Do you
in.
want to keep
Let's get
teasing
it.
them?
Yeah. I wanted to string them along for a bit. Now, you graduated from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to become a health coach, and then later on, you've been studying the radical remission ways and became a coach with them, which is what I love about health coaching. Is it's not like one and done. You're not like, well, I mean, I guess some people could do that, but most health coaches, they're growing constantly, ongoingly, bringing new tools under the tool belt to aid their clients in the best possible health, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, right? So we're not like, well, you got to drink your 8 glasses of water and go for a walk. Like, see you next week. It's so much more than that. It's so custom tailored to each person and their unique needs.
Yeah.
And we help them build their health based on what they want and help them, and usually clients will come and tell you where their problems are. Like, listen, I have a really hard time with this and I really want to overcome that. And you're like, okay, let's work on it,
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful because we pull the solutions out of them and help them take charge of their health to where it's easy now. We take it from being hard to being easy, and then that we help them master it. And so I love the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is where we both graduated from, surprisingly. And I have a feeling we graduated at the same time because I started the podcast in 2016, and I'm pretty sure I graduated. I have to go back and look because it's been so long, but I think we might have graduated at the same time because I know I started it soon after the podcast. So that's really cool that we probably did it at the same time. And
That is
IIN,
cool.
has transformed so much since then. They have Deepak Chopra with all of his courses added to it. They have a lot more that's going on. And listeners who are inspired by Liz and would love to become a health coach, either just for your own personal growth, about 50% of people that graduate from IIN do it just for their own personal growth so that they can help their friends and family and themselves. But if you want to either add this to your tool belt because you're a practitioner, or you want to just experience this wonderful transformative year of being focused on health, check out learntruehealth.com/coach. That's learntruehealth.com/coach. That gives you a free sample class, so you can get a feel for what it's like. And then also, listeners, if you have any questions at all about it, I would love to share my personal experience or answer your questions about the program. I'm such a huge advocate of the of IIN's program because I see that it really helps people get that full picture of how they can support their body mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So, okay, let's jump in. Let's jump into the 10 steps to radical remission.
Okay, now before I do, I'm going to explain a little bit about how they came to be.
Okay.
Because I think that really sets the stage. So Kelly Turner was a PhD student from Cal Berkeley back in, I think, I don't even know how many years ago now, at least almost 20 years ago. And she was an oncology social worker at the time and decided to go back for her PhD to study spontaneous remissions because she did not know why no one else was researching them and felt that there was a lot that could be learned from their healing and what it is that they did. And I don't think she really knew what she was going to find out, but what she did find out, so she traveled the world. She was sponsored by the American Cancer Society, and she traveled all over the world to interview radical remission survivors and their healers so that she could figure out what it is that they did on their healing journey. And what she found was there were over, 75 different factors that came up in the research on what these people did. But after researching 1,500 plus cases of these spontaneous remissions, she found 10 things that they all did. So all the people that were researched, live interviews versus also, medical journals and whatnot, she was able to conclude 10 factors that they all did. And those are what we refer to as the radical remission healing factors. And so I can happily share what they are. They fall into 3 categories. One is physical. To no surprise, you will hear about movement and exercise being one factor, changing your diet, and taking herbs and supplements from a licensed practitioner. And those are out of the 10, those are the only 3 physical factors. And probably the ones maybe more familiar to people than the others as a healing modality. Truly, each of these factors, it can be supported and is supported. We do a workshop called the Radical Remission Workshop. And in the workshop, we talk about each factor, how it came up in the research, and then peer-reviewed scientific research that backs it up. And then we share a healing story of someone who changed their healing path with that factor as one of the lead. And then we do an activity in the workshop to help people figure out how to implement that into their own life. So the 3: physical, diet, exercise, and taking herbs and supplements, those are the physical. And then the rest are emotional and spiritual. So we have one that sounds very familiar to what the kinds of things you've been talking about today so far, called empowering yourself. And empowering yourself from a radical remission survivor perspective is really someone who is what we might think of as a typical difficult patient. So someone who's trying to ask questions and understand the medicines that they're going to be taking, and maybe finding their own research and bringing it to their doctor, finding second, third, fourth opinions, different kinds of practitioners and healers that they want to have on their team. But really someone who is taking the reins and being the CEO of their own health and making sure that they are really mindfully adding practitioners and ones that they feel really aligned with in their healing.
I love that you said difficult patient because like it's called self-advocacy, right? It's you're
Right.
advocating for yourself. And my friend who I talked about, she brought me, and sometimes it was my husband and I would attend all of her appointments. She got second and third opinions from doctors and naturopaths and all kinds of practitioners that are not in the same network, because you don't want to go to like Dr. A and then walk down the hall to
Hmm.
Dr. B. They're under the same roof, they're in the same network, they're of course going to agree with each other. And she had a huge binder she built. And I feel like that even intimidated the doctors. She walked in with her very well organized binder with all of her labs, all of her scans, all of the notes, and she collected data and she researched and she was so thorough with all of it. And then she always had someone with her, and we always recorded each appointment. And this ensured that they wouldn't belittle her, talk down to her, brush her off, or like
Hmm.
kind of start uh, urging her to, no, tomorrow you got to start chemo tomorrow, because they
Right.
tried to do that. And my husband stood up. I mean, not like he wasn't being intimidating, but this woman started to like speak
Strong arm her.
fear, strong arm, thank you, she was speaking fear into my friend. Like, my friend had a golf ball sized tumor, nothing else, it wasn't stage 4 yet. And this woman was like, we have to get a port in today, and we're going to start chemo tomorrow. And this was her first appointment. She hadn't gotten any other second opinion, third opinion. um and it was just rush, 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 rush. And that's what they do. They get it, like, they try to fear you. And of course, we want to do things in a timely manner, but we also want to take a step back and really evaluate and collect data. And
Right.
my husband stood up and said, if our friend follows through, and she does, you guys miraculously picked the right chemotherapy, because they weren't going to do any kind of testing to figure out which one was the right one. And it goes away, right? Let's say it goes away. What are the side effects of your chemotherapy? Tell us all the side effects, and will it cause cancer? And she said yes. Even in the best of cases, 2% of people. It's like, she goes, only 2% of people will develop leukemia from getting this. And my husband was just blown away. He goes, no, 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 that's not only 2%.
Hmm.
2% is two people out of 100.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's not a small, that's not like an insignificant thing. So, and they give chemo to, tens or hundreds of thousands of people. Just think about how many leukemias they've created. That's just a cash cow. So it's, anyways, this idea of self-advocacy, sometimes it's also like, grab a friend, make sure that you're heard, and make sure that there's someone else that's also taking notes, or like, so that
Right.
was so
Yes.
impressive that, so, like, you do not need to be alone. You don't
Yes.
you this is you're not. So many, my mom was so ashamed that she got cancer, she didn't tell any of her friends till she died.
Mm.
And everyone was shocked at her funeral, because she had so many friends. She was surrounded by all these women that were just like in tears, thinking like, I could have been there for my friend, but she never even let me in. And it's
Right.
just, my mom felt such shame and guilt.
Mm.
And I didn't understand that,
Yeah.
that really your friends want to be there for you. And yet when we're the ones sick, we think, oh, well, we don't want to be a burden on someone else.
Right. Yes, exactly. And actually that's one of the healing factors is increasing social support, because
Yes.
having that social support system in place. And we talk about in our workshop, we'll talk about how there's two kinds, right? There's giving love and there's receiving love. And giving always feels a little bit easier, to be the one that's offering the help, but it's equally important to receive, if not more so sometimes, to be willing to ask for the tap back into those people that you've been there for, that want to be there for you. And I always suggest this to people when we're working together in this factor specifically. When someone asks you, if your best friend were to ask you to do something for them, would you think they were a burden? And I'm pretty sure most people would say no. And in fact, the joy that people get from helping others that
Mm-hmm.
they love,
Mm-hmm.
that is what we really want people to focus on. Is think about it as a gift that you're both receiving. They get to help you and you get helped.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important for people to realize that having people, even just the little things like, hey, can you bring in my mail for me? Something as small as that, if they're, that's small, but that is a person that's going to cross your path that day that wouldn't have otherwise. And with that path crossing, you're going to have a conversation, and you're going to maybe find out what they did today, and they're going to talk to you a little bit. And then the conversation becomes something that may have nothing to do with your disease, your depression, your fear. It's a way for you to kind of get outside of your head and feel supported and feel the love from some people that are in your support system. And like to your mom's point, there's a lot of emotions around it. So I feel like that social support has varied tremendously from person to person. It's just as individual as diet might be. Of, some people only want their spouse to know, and they never will tell anybody at work, and they don't want anyone to know. And then you have somebody else, the next person might say, oh yeah, I'm on every possible Facebook page, every social media outlet. I'm sharing my story. I have a blog. I have, this, that, and the other. So there is such a spectrum of people's comfort in sharing and giving and receiving that social support, that it really is very personal how people, and it's important to respect that perspective, because that, you don't want to push somebody that really doesn't want that to be something that they identify as.
Right, exactly. Benjamin Franklin figured something out. I read this years ago, and it fascinated me that there was a politician who they sort of butted heads. They didn't really, I think they were on, like, one was on one side, one was on the other. And he went over to his office and he asked to borrow a book. And he didn't need the book, but he just seemed interested in the book and asked to borrow it. And he was doing this experiment, and what he saw was, we often think that when we do favors for other people, that makes them like us, but it's the opposite that is even more true. That when we ask for favors, it's something in the brain makes the person who's giving the favor like the person they're helping even more. It gains more rapport, because of course you're doing something good for someone. It's like you wouldn't do something good for someone that you didn't like. And so he ended up turning that around to a really good friendship after a while of borrowing his books and asking for favors he like needed or didn't need, just to like build that rapport and that trust. So when we're sitting there worried that we're going to be this burden, it's like you said, that gift of giving to someone else. They become more invested in you and your health and your well-being, and they feel so good doing it. So you're giving them that gift of feeling so good being part of someone else. So we really like stepping outside of ourselves and helping other people. It's also very cathartic for those around you. So you're not just asking for healing for yourself, you're actually helping your community heal.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, that the power of connection. The science research that we share, which on this specific factor, social support, and having the right social support, is more powerful for your healing than not drinking, not eating junk food, and not smoking. So combined. So if you have like a really good social support system, then that trumps all those other attributes that are also important. But imagine if you can do that with the social support, it's just exponentially more healing.
This makes complete sense. I interviewed Dr. Alan Christensen, I think 3 or 4 times. He's a really interesting doctor, a naturopathic endocrinologist, and he cites a very large study. They did this nurses study. I apologize, I don't remember the exact details because this interview was about 2 years ago, but listeners can go search Dr. Alan Christensen on the learntruehealth.com and find it. It was my most recent episode with him, but he talked about this study, and he also talks about it in his book, Recovery, like his adrenal health recovery book. But he talks about how they looked at the factors of overall health, and like they followed people to their death. Basically, they followed people from adulthood all the way to when they pass away. And they looked at what were the most important factors. And you would think not smoking would be the number one, but it wasn't. And that was really interesting, that number one had to do with your stress levels. Like, for example, not having social support is a
Mm-hmm.
high stressor. And when you have social support, it lowers our stress levels, just like, getting enough sleep, that kind of thing. But it makes so much sense. So that those people that live to be 110 years old down in the South, and the reporter goes on their porch and asks them what they've done their whole life, and you're thinking they eat kale, and they say, well, I make sure I drink a whiskey and I definitely smoke a cigar. Those people probably have this wonderful support system of this a very rich social network.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of proven in the blue zone theory, right? So those people that are
Yes.
most often over centenarians, over 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they do? A lot of times people will research that and those people and what they do. And it's not that they're not drinking and smoking, it's that they have that social connection and that bond. They feel included, that they belong. And all of those things are just they're innate things that we need as human beings.
This is probably why women live longer than men
We're social
generally.
creatures.
Yeah, because I mean, if I mean, God forbid, if I passed away, knock on my sunlight and sauna sitting beside me, um, my husband, I don't know what he would do. And I, because I'm his liaison to all social things. He would probably just crawl into a cave. Hopefully not, but I see women definitely live longer than men for the most part. And we're also just like wired to be more social generally, and build network and build connection and help each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good
Okay.
stuff. All
So
right. You wanted some more?
yes, I want some more. Give it to
Okay.
us.
All right. So, uh, releasing suppressed emotions is one of them, which is kind of where we put in, stress, anxiety, depression, those kind of emotions that get stuck in our bodies. And we counterpoint that with increasing positive emotions. So, not only is it important to release the traumas and things that kind of get stuck in us emotionally and not just push it down, but to release it, it's also very important to increase the positivity in our everyday. And the Radical Remission survivor interviews defined increasing positive emotions as something that was like a muscle that needed to be worked. And it was something that they needed to do at least 5 minutes a day and kind of grow from there to, as much time as they could throughout their day. And again, very personal to each person, but the research is really impressive when you look at the cancer research on increasing positivity. So there is research studies that show that when someone is in chemotherapy, they did a study where half the people doing chemo were just told to go about their business, do their usual routine, and the other half was shown comedy. And as they followed those in the study, they found that those who watched comedy during their treatments, the treatments were more effective, the side effects were lower, they had a higher quality of life and longevity. And that's just simply from the power of positivity and joy and laughter and finding that within. So that's a really powerful. Both of those are really kind of that emotional component to those factors.
Love it.
Yeah. The next one I will share is spiritual connection. And this one is it doesn't tie to a specific religion. It's really just making sure that people realize the power of believing in something greater than themselves, whether that's, standing overlooking the Grand Canyon and having awe of nature, or is it, feeling connected to someone that's passed away. There are ways to tap into spiritual connection that don't revolve around religion. And it's important to have some kind of connection. Again, it doesn't matter what it is, it just matters that they had one.
And if you find significance in a religion, run with it, right? If you, it's
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Yes.
it's whatever connection you have to source.
Yes, exactly.
And it's in the Bible alone, there's so many names for God. Like, we don't need to get hung up on a name. It's an intimate and beautiful relationship you have to this connection we have
Mm-hmm.
to our creator. And
Yep.
that what I love is the more I look into the science of the universe, the more it becomes irrefutable that there's a divine intelligence behind it. We're not chaos does not create life. We've never observed chaos and randomness creating life, right? And when we look deeper and deeper into life, we see that there's so much organization, that there's something behind the veil happening in the background. And it's that beautiful belief that we are connected, we're part of something greater, and there's a purpose for us. That is what I want you to have. I want you to have that feeling that you've been created and divinely created for a purpose, and that you matter.
Yes. Yes. And that also kind of helps propel that desire to be here on this planet and gives us the essence of hope. You know, if you don't have a belief that there's something greater out there, it probably would be very difficult to find hope from within to believe that you can heal.
I personally, I personally am Christian, and I when I lost my daughter 2 years ago, some people turn away from God when tragedy happens, and I felt Him so strongly in my life. And it's like, I don't know the grand scheme of things, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's, I
Hmm.
believe I had this belief, like, that everything happens for a reason. I don't know what the reason is for losing her, but I believe I will see her again one day, and God has a plan for me, and I'm trust God. And we put that on
Yes.
her gravestone. We put
Mm.
trust God. That was my husband who said that. He said, I said, "What do you want on her?" Like, we were planning it out, and he never grew up in religion, or really, he just always believed that there's something out
Hmm.
there, there's some greater, that we're connected somehow. And
Yeah.
and after she died, we both felt the Holy Spirit. We both felt God just hugging us and comforting us. And we turned to each other, and he goes, "I've never felt this before." He goes, "I feel him. I feel God's presence, like, just
Hmm.
trying to comfort us." And so he said, I want to say trust God on her gravestone. And just so all the other, because she's buried in a child cemetery. So when you go there, I mean, I weep every time I go there, just for all the other moms,
Hmm.
and just looking at, because these babies that were loved, just loved so much, and are loved for the rest of the parents' lives, right? And so they're
Yes.
not forgotten.
Right.
And so it doesn't, you don't have to be Christian, but if you are, or if that's, then I know, I want to say that God loves you. He loves you regardless of whether you're Christian or not. I know God has a love. There's a love to tap into. There's a divine love to tap into.
Yes.
And I just, as a side note, and I hope I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I'm Canadian, so I'm very polite. But there was a bumper sticker that I made me laugh out loud. My son came running around the car, and he's like, "What?" And I couldn't stop laughing. There's a bumper sticker at our church on one of the cars that said, "It's okay. God doesn't believe in atheists either." And and so, a lot of people have been turned off by religion because the man-made corruption, really, it
Hmm.
hurts people's intimate connections with source, with creation, right? So
Yeah.
so it's not about joining yourself to something you don't like, that you don't align with.
Right.
It's just about you and God. There's nothing, it doesn't have to be anything in between you and God. It doesn't have to be a building, it doesn't have to be a
Yes.
person, it doesn't have to be an ideology, but get, just sit down with God, right? And just say, "Okay, show yourself, increase your presence in my life, so that I can know you're here for me, so that I can
Oh,
know that I am
absolutely.
part of something." And that opens up so much. It's really cool. He's a gentleman. He will, and I say he, I know, like, you know what, this isn't about, like, obviously, God doesn't have, like, a genitalia, like, man, like, people get all hung up on, like, he or she. It's
Right.
my pastor says, God is a gentleman, and he will wait to be invited in, like, he's, so just ask. But it's really beautiful, and for me, I don't care what religion people join to. I want them to have a personal experience of God's love for them. I think that opens the doorway for so much for that person.
Yeah, and I think that as people who are in a situation with a really heavy diagnosis, one of the other factors is follow your intuition,
Mm.
and I feel what you're saying about the spiritual connection. Similarly, the way that intuition has presented in the research is that once something really big has happened to you that will change how you view life, I guess is kind of a good way to summarize,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's grief or a diagnosis. For me, my loss brought an intense validation of spiritual connection that I will
Mm-hmm.
never lose. And I'm grateful that that was a silver lining that can come out of something that is so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And having that belief, my personal belief, and having that spiritual connection, it was really powerful for part of my healing and through my grief, and acceptance of my loss. And what's interesting is that a lot in the research, the following your intuition is another factor. And what Dr. Turner's interviews shared, they shared that some people would actually started hearing voices with the when they received the information that they had a cancer diagnosis, to the point where they thought they were going crazy. They really
Mm-hmm.
just could not believe that they were hearing something inside speak to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, there's a lot to be said for when your brain and your mind and your body all kind of have this physical shift together, things get shaken up. And
Mm-hmm.
you might find spiritual connection that you may not have had before. You may find an easier way to tap into your intuition, whether it's through a voice or through dreams or through guided journaling and meditation. Lots of different ways to kind of connect with that intuitive part. But just the way I see it, like spiritual connection, those things can birth from kind of a big life change.
I love it. And listening to that soft, still voice, and it's always, for me, intuition is always the first thing that comes. It's always the first voice. And it's not as loud as the objections. That's because that's your logic brain going, what? It's kind of sort of like you wake up in the morning and it's sunny outside and this little voice says, bring an umbrella. And then you're like, why do I need an umbrella? I don't need an umbrella. It's sunny outside. And I talk myself out of this little voice.
Yeah.
And the voice doesn't fight back. It's
Right.
just a suggestion. It's like, that's why I said, like, God's a gentleman. You know what I mean? He's just like, hey, just so you know this. And you're like, well, I don't need that. And then, of course, like, we're outside and it starts raining. And we're like, oh, that's why my intuition said, bring an umbrella.
Yeah.
But we often will argue or dispute the little voice, the intuition. And so instead we need to learn to slow down. That's why I love, just prayer, meditation, or just sitting with yourself. It doesn't have to be for long periods of time. Just sit with yourself. Take 5 slow, deep breaths, focus in on your gut, focus in on the tension and release the tension in your body and just listen and be with yourself. And then ask yourself, okay, what do I feel? How do I feel about this decision? How do I feel about this information? And slow things down so you can hear the first thing that happens is usually the intuition, right? You got to slow it down and take it seriously instead of disregard it. Because that's what the logic brain loves to just squash the intuition. So I always kick myself because I'm like, oh man, like looking back, I'm like, I knew I should have done this, but I overrode the intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's easy to do. I mean,
It's so
logic
easy.
can be really loud in people's heads. It depends on
Yep.
the person, obviously. But that's something that we work on with our clients and in our workshop, is kind of teaching people that is a scientific part of your body, and
Mm-hmm.
that your intuition does exist, and it needs to be, again, also like increasing positive emotions, it needs to be a muscle that we work so that we keep it present. And little ways that you can test stuff like that would be, or to work that muscle would be, if you're standing outside of an elevator, 2 elevator doors, which one's going to open first? Or if your phone rings or you get a ding that you have a message, take a pause and try to just, in your gut, who do you think it is? It's little tiny ways that we can try to tap into the unknown without aid.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we only have one factor left. It is having strong reasons for living, which, in other words, is purpose. So that is a really incredibly powerful factor, and came up very clearly in the research that if everybody needed to have a reason to be here, whether it was something little like they're not gonna go anywhere until they get the scrapbook finished for their grandchild, or they want to walk somebody down the aisle, or they have a mental note. I actually had a client fairly recently talk about how all they wanted when they were diagnosed was to see their kids graduate from high school, and they started crying and crying. And I thought they were, that's great, their kids are going to high school now, or I guess when their kids were graduating high school. And she was like, but my kids are graduating high school now, like as if she was about to expire because
Oh
that was
no.
happening. And I was like, well, you just need to, reset that goal. That's all. It's, you're still going to be here. And there was no reason to um, assume that things had changed physically just because that monumental moment had finally come. She had made that achievement,
Yep.
and she just needed to set the sights a little further.
Yep.
So,
When you set a timed goal, like a goal that's like by September 1st or by
mm-hmm,
March 1st of next year. And when you set a timed goal, uh at 85% of the way towards your goal, create a new goal. We're driven by that momentum. We're driven by two things: the away from, so moving away from what we don't want, and
mm-hmm.
moving towards what we do want. And as we get, it's kind of like a train coming into the train station, right? Slows down. It's like, okay, I'm approaching my goal. I guess I'm slowing down. So we have to cast that. We have to pick up the goal and throw it further down the timeline. And not be. We don't want to always focus on what we don't want to have. Because that motivation fades the further we get away from what we don't have. And those are people who kind of like they bounce off zero, or they bounce off rock bottom because they're only focusing on what they don't want to have happen. So they have to
Right.
use what they don't want to like launch them forward. Like, I don't want to die of cancer. Okay, good. Well, let's get to work, right? And
Right.
then it's like the bigger thing is they need to see the future. They need to see themselves a year, 5 years, 10 years in the future, and have those visualizations of the goals. But always pick up the goal at 85% there and throw it further into the
Yeah.
future, and keep moving towards that.
I love that. That's a
Yeah.
really good point. With the strong reasons for living, we define that a lot of times with being the opposite of depression. So, like, because
Mm.
depression is defined by not having a will to live. So, to your point of, making sure that you continue to have something down the road, whether you have to push your goal back or reset a goal or have a new target, you always want to have the reason that you want to be here being bigger than the fear. So, I don't want to die from cancer. Okay, well, we don't want that, but what do you want? So trying to have that mindset switch of trying to think positively and setting, manifesting out there, law of attraction, whatever you want to, however you want to call it, but what do you want to happen as opposed to fearing what you don't want to happen?
Exactly. Love
Yeah.
it. So, how long has Radical Remission .com, like how long, I like these workshops, these books, how long has this been a movement?
So Radical Remission, the first book came out in 2014.
Okay, yeah, you said that. Sorry. So it's
That's
it's
okay.
still it's I mean, it's been around the block, but it's not ancient, right? And it's based on all the science. But
Hmm.
it's been around long enough to prove itself, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there's lots and lots of healing stories on the, if you go on the social media or in the newsletter every month, there's another healing story that's being shared. And that's what we're hoping to get from the podcast is
Mm-hmm.
for people to be able to hear the voices of these people with incredible healing from late stage cancers. And that's something that's been really important to me after working with these just incredible people, these human beings that, we cross paths with, and really sharing that cancer does not equal death sentence. And even if you have a metastatic diagnosis, that does not mean that that is something that you're necessarily going to have the rest of your life. There are so many amazing things that can happen and changes that you can make to improve your quality of life and your longevity. And, I really can't wait to share the stories of people that, they're years out of their terminal diagnosis, and thriving and just living such cool, incredible lives that I can't wait to share those.
Oh my gosh. Do you have any right now you could share?
Stories?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, I have all kinds of stories.
I only want to hear ones that have made you cry.
Oh, interesting. Oh, well, I'll tell you one that I think I tend to default to this story because I just it's this guy's just an incredibly inspirational man and friend, now colleague. He's a radical remission coach now, but he is somebody who has cured his two different kinds of cancer naturally through the wild. Maybe a great future podcast guest for you. His name is Dean Hall, and he has a book he just put out called The Wild Cure. And he has healed himself. He wanted to prove to the world that late stage cancer patients could still have a life. So we're very aligned in that mission. Mm-hmm. And this was years ago when he had leukemia and lymphoma. And when he had set a goal to make history by swimming the length of the Willamette River in Oregon. And he, put everything in place to do the swim over the course of a few weeks or a couple weeks. And during his swim, he would go into hypothermia multiple times throughout this swim. And he'd have to get out, kind of shake off his coldness and feel his extremities again before he would pop back into the water.
Oh my goodness.
And at the end of his swim, after he's done, he makes history. He swims this length of this river. I think it's like 183 miles or something.
87. I just looked it
87.
up.
Yeah,
187 miles.
Mm-hmm. And he ended up curing his leukemia with the hypothermia.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah, and so I'll leave you with that being as how he cured one of his cancers, but he did cure his other cancer also through nature, and he's an incredible story and a really the book outlines. It's kind of a cool book the way that it's positioned because it's all the different interviews with the people that were part of that swim and different perspectives. So it's a really cool approach to sharing the story and writing. So Dean will share his story on our podcast, but I'm sure if you reach out to him, he may share his story with you as well. But
I'll get his story out of him.
Yes.
You don't worry about that.
He's a great guy with a great story and really just a great soul. He really has a really beautiful energy about him and the way he shares his story. So cool. I will say he's one. And then, I gotta, of course, throw out to my business partner, Carla. She and I work together virtually. I'm in New Jersey and she's in Chicago area. And she is 7 years in remission or no evidence of disease from metastatic breast cancer.
Love it.
So she has, through all of her radical remission, healing factor usage and finding her way to healing, she too is someone who continues to just, inspire me all the time with her ease at just, having moved on from such a big thing in her life and just embracing every single minute with joy and interest. And she's just a very passionate person. So another really great person to share her story.
Cool. Any just off the top of your head, any ones that you can share that like really blew you away?
Well, I've heard of some really funky healing modalities.
All right, let's talk about it. Sure,
that's
why not?
some fun things to share. I mean, people try so many different things, and if you're not well versed in the alternative cancer world, then you may not know about coffee enemas And
Oh, honey, you're preaching to the choir.
good.
Everyone, almost. I mean, I can't guarantee everyone, but like, that's not taboo subject here. So
Good. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, bring it.
I'm well aligned with the audience then.
Yeah.
But one of the coaches on my team, my private practice is actually called the Health Navigators, and there's a bunch of us that coach together over on that platform. And one of them is my friend Emma, my fellow coach, and she shared that she, I think it was some kind of poison from a toad or something that she ended up doing. The I can't remember, the terminology is escaping me right now, but she said it was an incredibly detoxifying treatment. As ugly as it was in the moment, she said it was worth it. And
that's wild.
Yeah, there's some pretty fun things to hear people, how people heal. And she, and they all say, I don't know if that helped or not, but it felt right. So,
the thing that's important it's important to understand, like, when you're up against a major diagnosis, like, I know scientifically it's like, well, I should do one thing at a time just to make sure I know which one worked. Like, I have clients that are like, well, you've given me 3 things to do, but I'm just going to do one and see how it goes, because I don't know which one's going to work. And I'm like, honey, if I had a major diagnosis, I wouldn't care which one worked. I am throwing the kitchen sink at this, as long as it's, not going to hurt me, right? It's all beneficial stuff. It's all building the body. And sometimes it takes, to tip the scales, it takes multiple things. It takes the licking a toad and drinking juice and putting coffee in your butt. I don't know. Like, it just, like, do it all, because what's the alternative? Cut, burn, and poison. And their success rates are horrible. And then while you're doing their modalities, it's so sad. It's so sad. And here's the crazy thing. Something as simple as fasting, like being on a 3-day fast before chemo, they've done these studies. People have tremendous results. Like, they don't lose their hair.
Right.
Like, they don't have nausea. There's a plethora. I was just looking up this information. There are hundreds of studies on ginger, like ginger juice, like just taking fresh ginger root or taking ginger capsules or whatever, but just like ginger, between 1 and 4 grams of ginger significantly reduces nausea. But of course, what are these doctors? These doctors aren't trained in this. They're not looking at it. They're only looking at what drug they can give you, and they're going to give you some anti-nausea drug. And we see that just by incorporating herbs and roots like ginger, we're helping the body and supporting the body. It's like an immune booster, right? So we're supporting the whole body, not poisoning it. And it just drives me nuts that there's these simple things. If you decided to do chemo, it's like proven fasting helps before chemo. Proven ginger helps before chemo. These are studies. These are like scientifically driven. This isn't woo-woo. And you could do 10 different things, like watch comedy. Like, you could go down a list of stuff if you wanted to also, cut, burn, and poison. If you wanted to go that route, there's, like you said, part of radical remission could also be combining conventional. I really dislike this word conventional, because we say conventionally grown farm produce in the grocery store. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm 43 years old. I remember when you could buy food that was like real, right? Like, like, I remember when carrots tasted like carrots and not cardboard, and tomatoes actually was like a food orgasm in your mouth. Like, tomatoes had flavor. Now everything tastes like cardboard. And I'm like doing air quotes, conventionally grown apple, which I think you also would have learned this in IIN. A conventionally grown apple has 50 different chemicals sprayed on it. So of course the tree is uptaking that as well. It's not just like, oh, just peel the apple or just wash the apple. It's going to wash away all the 50 man-made chemicals that are forever chemicals that are
by the special detergent in a squeeze bottle or spray bottle from the grocery store to clean off the pesticides.
It's ridiculous. So it's like this idea that conventional is better. Like, this is that Orwellian language. And again, everyone get out your tinfoil. We're going to fold a little hat to put on, right? So they, and you're in the right place when I get on my soapbox and grab my tinfoil. But this idea, like, look into Orwellian language, because this is part of the PR. And if you look way back to Edward Bernays, who was Freud's nephew, he was able to make women smoke cigarettes. Women didn't smoke cigarettes. There was like, it was very rare. Only the cowboys and the bad guys and like the jocks smoked. And it wasn't sexy or cool. They didn't have filters. Like, it was gross, right?
Yeah.
And he manipulated and brainwashed everyone to believe that it was part of the women's liberal movement. And so women took up smoking. And then, of course, they had doctors saying smoking's good for you. Like, it's all a scam. PR is a scam. And the words they use are manipulative. So when they say conventional treatments versus alternative, you think, well, I'm going to go with conventional because that sounds proven. No, the conventional treatments are nouveau. And alternative treatments have been around for 3,000 years, which, which one do you now listen? You're going to do what you're going to do, and I respect whatever decision you make, but don't let the marketing brainwash you into not being fully informed.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to do, because, most of the people that I work with are doing an integrative approach. So they are, using both modalities. And I can tell, without a doubt that, doing the combination is what is the secret sauce to, their success with high quality of life, high energy, ability to have a life outside of, working through medical, treatments. But it's just incredible you just have to look at a doctor as someone who's staying in his lane. And there's a lot of things that they can't and won't say to protect themselves legally.
And that's so sad.
It's
so sad.
The culture has created this. And if I think back to this empowerment factor, the most important thing you can do is see that your doctor is just a human being and he's in one lane. And he can be part of your team, but he does not have to be
the whole team,
the person that's telling you what to do. So making sure that you feel, aligned with this person, that you agree with their bedside manner and their treatment plan for you, and that you believe that what they're going to do for you will help you heal. And if you don't believe that wholeheartedly, then that intuition in your body is going to speak, and it's going to counteract what, the benefits that you're gaining. Not completely necessarily, but it can impact that. So knowing that these healing factors are all immune boosting, scientifically proven to be immune boosting. And unfortunately, it's up to us, human beings, to educate ourselves on things outside of medicine and find them on our own. That's what makes it seem, alternative, because it's not the standard of care, quote, standard of care being the norm.
The for-profit industry.
Right. And when you go outside of what's quote unquote normal, it can seem risky, or there can be uncertainty around that. But the thing about these 10 healing factors and just lifestyle change as health coaches that we teach people are that these are things that you can do on your own. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to increase your positive emotions. Take some effort.
Right.
So listening to your intuition. There's nothing you can do to pay for that to be something that you do. You can't buy your intuition.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that can be done that are free, but you have to know that that's a healing factor, and also have the ability and the tools to implement them. And that's where, you and I both know that's where health coaching comes in with, implementation. How do we do these things?
Yes. Love it.
Yeah.
Liz, tell us about how we can follow you, how listeners can plug into what you're doing. What should the listeners know so they can take some actions?
Yeah, absolutely. So radicalremission.com is going to be a great place to start. It'll walk you through all of the different offerings from, what we do, whether it's, sharing about the research. There's teacher training that we do for health coaches and medical practitioners who want to embody these, healing factors into their current practices. We offer the Radical Remission workshops, constantly always having more workshops up on that website on the workshop page. And then there's 115 Radical Remission coaches certified at the moment, another training class starting in about a month. And those health coaches are all on the website as well, so they can be connected with. They're all over the world, all different countries, all different languages. And the book Radical Remission itself has been translated into to 22 or 23. I think it recently got another language there. But you can find all that on the website. And the Radical Remission Project is on Facebook and Instagram, and always offering more inspirational stories to share. And if you are interested in connecting with me myself, my practice is the Health Navigators. My website is healthnavs.com. And you can find myself and my team there to join we have what we call our virtual cancer wellness community, because we gather people who are like-minded and bring them together to, we call them our inspired cancer patients, because they are always kind of looking ahead at like what's the next healing modality and what else is out there, and then sharing it with each other. So having a community of like-minded people who are, overcoming a significant diagnosis, that's where you will find that.
And it's not just cancer, although, I mean, that's really where we're up against it. But there's so many other diagnoses.
Yes.
I have a friend who's bedridden right now, and she's overcoming some major diagnoses. She was poisoned by Monsanto. It's such a long story. She's part of a giant class action lawsuit, and her body, the doctors thought she'd die years ago. Like she's just, because of natural medicine, and I think she's actually like looking at this list of 10 things, she's following this, and I can't wait for her to one day be on your show, because she's in the middle of it now. But I'm really looking forward to introducing this to her, because she's gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. Maybe she needs to increase this more or that more, but she's doing all this stuff, and the doctors are shocked she's still alive. And then I introduced a type of therapy. It's a wearable technology. It's actually really affordable, and she's having amazing shifts, like leaps and bounds. And it one of the things it does, which made me think of the coffee enemas. Coffee enemas are messy, or can be messy if you do it wrong. It can be really messy if you do it wrong, and also just like takes up a lot of time, because if you have cancer, the thing is, they say do it 6 times a day. Well, like who has time to do 6 coffee enemas a day? Like when I do a coffee enema, it's one, and it's like a whole, like half a day to work up to doing it, right? And like all the preparation and everything. So it's definitely emotionally costly. Like there's a lot of energy that goes into doing these coffee enemas. Well, the whole point of a coffee enema is to stimulate more glutathione production. And one of the things this wearable technology does is it increases glutathione by 300%. And it is like less than $1 a day kind of thing. It's way more effective than oral. It's way more effective and lasts longer than IV. So I had an episode about it a few podcasts ago, but if listeners are interested in gaining more information about that, I'd love to share. I'd love to provide. I've got a whole email I've compiled with like all these videos and all the science behind it that I send out to anyone who wants it. You can go to learnthroughhealth.com, and in the menu it says work with Ashley James. Just click on that and then click on the first session down. It's free. It's a free 15-minute phone call, and I'll talk to you about your health, the things you want to overcome, and I'll send you all the science and the information and stuff, and help you if you'd like to try it. It also has a money back guarantee, which I pretty much don't work with any company that doesn't, because I want a company to stand behind their product. It's been around for 20 years and it has over 100 studies. So, awesome. and I have about 120 clients right now using it with incredible success. But that one factor is it increases glutathione by 300%. And that was like, for me, I was like, why, coffee enema is great, but like, if you could just wear a little technology and go about your day and have an even better result than oral or IV or messy coffee enemas, then and it's affordable, then it's a no-brainer. And I've seen my son, his allergies are significantly reduced, which is really exciting since I introduced this to him. Yeah, so this is what I'm all about. Learning about these off the wall, not conventional, but still science-based, still proven modalities that could be the determining factor for someone, right? That could be the difference that makes a difference. But we have to do all 10 steps, because this is, like you said, it's been proven that all these together really shift things for people. And whether it's cancer or something else. We want that shift. We want you to get to that place in your life where you are thriving. And that's what Learn True Health is. It's thriving on every single degree of your life.
Yeah, that's great.
That's what I want
I love
for
it.
everyone. Yeah, Liz, I know I threw a million questions at you and we talked so much, but is there anything left unsaid? Is there anything you want to make sure that you leave the listener with today?
I would say if this resonated with you, please reach out for a Radical Remission workshop. We do free info sessions all the time, and you can find them on radicalremission.com under the workshop page. And you can learn more about the healing factors and how the workshop works. And the workshop itself is usually about a 5-week commitment. It's 10 hours. And all done virtually. There are local ones on the website occasionally if one of the teachers can do something in, locally to where they live, or retreats. And we hope that we can answer any questions for you there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. It was such a pleasure having you on the show. And
you.
I just know introducing people to this concept has been a breath of fresh air. Just like, yes, this is what I've been looking for, that it's proven we can heal ourselves. Our body has a God-given ability to heal ourselves. We grew ourselves from 2 tiny like half cells that came together and made 1 cell. We came from 1 cell. And now we're 37.2 trillion cells. And if that wasn't miraculous for you, cellular biologists have described the human cell as having more things going on inside that cell than the entire island of Manhattan.
Wow.
Like, you can think about all the organization that it takes to like bring the groceries in and get the garbage out and get the electricity and just all the things that happen, the hustle and bustle of Manhattan. There's more things that are happening inside the human cell. Well, inside complex cells, right? There's so much going on inside our body that we're still learning every day. We're still learning new things. There's undiscovered territory, and it's miraculous and beautiful. And so we're like back in the day with the leeches, right? Like the doctors who are like, yep, we got a bloodlet. That's the way to do it. Whatever your problem is, like, just like, you got to get some blood out of you. Like we got to bleed the humors out of you. But these doctors are standing there with their lab coats and they're telling you, well, you're only going to live for 3 months if you don't immediately cut off your breast and get some radiation. I mean, like, think about it. Like, the radiation causes cancer, but we're going to cure it. We're going to kill just the cancer, but we're definitely not going to hurt any other part of your body. Well, maybe a few cells, but you'll be fine. Right. And it's kind of wild to think like this is the only model we're allowed is cut, burn, and poison in the United States. It is actually legally meant to be like protected, right? But if you go to Europe, they're allowed to use hyperbaric chambers. They're allowed to use ozone. It's part of their scientific model for helping people overcome. And then you have Mexico, which is like a free-for-all of natural modalities that may work or may not. But it's like, at least you have access. At least what happened to freedom? At least you have access to it. And it's such a wild thing. But to take the advice of a doctor with a lab coat and say, this is the final word. That's like going to a doctor 500 years ago and saying, well, okay, I totally believe you, doc. Got to put some more leeches on me, right? They only have one piece of the pie, and we still as humans do not fully understand the human body. We still do not understand fully how our cells work. So to have a doctor say this is the way and the only way is ludicrous. That's why I love what you're sharing today. What you shared today, Liz, is that it has opened our eyes to that our body can heal itself and that we can take charge. And in NLP and neurolinguistic programming, there's a saying, who's driving the bus? And you started off by saying that we want you to empower yourself. And that's you stepping, just imagine yourself visually, you stepped from being the kid in the bus. Now you stepped over from that seat, in that bench seat. I want you to stand up in your mind, go sit down in the driver's seat and put your hand on the stick shift. And it just, in your mind, you know how to drive stick, okay, if you don't. And you're going to drive that bus. This is your life. You get to drive, you're the one driving the bus of your life, and you get to build your team of professionals that are there to help you and support you. And you get to fire professionals if they're not in alignment with your goal of 100% radical remission. And I love that you can plug into this whole group, the support network for radical remission, to see
Yeah.
that it's possible and to have other people say, yes, it is possible. Like it's a worthy goal. You know, it's you are worthy. You are worthy of this. So thank you,
Exactly.
Liz, for coming today and sharing this. Please come back on the show anytime you have more to share.
Thank
We'd
you.
love to hear more.
Yeah, it's been so much fun chatting with you and getting to share the radical remission stuff. And I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Yes, and I am going to be your number one fan the moment you hit publish on the first episode of the Radical Remission podcast. Can't wait to hear it.
Oh, thank you so much.